Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jaden and today I'm telling you about all 27 books I read in May. And before you're like, how can you read 27 books in May? 10 of them were comic books and we will get into those 10 comic books. So the first book I read was Read Between the Lies and I rated this one 3.75 stars. So Fern finally has her lifelong dream of being an author, but when her long-term bully from school also becomes an author, old stories and the truth start to come out. So I read from this author before and I did like the book. The first half was really interesting, especially when it came to the pandemic being mentioned, and then it just began to drag for me, especially at the end. Fern, who is our main character, does have a victim complex. It was a lot of why me, and it got really annoying as the book continued. I wish we got Haven's perspective, because Haven was like the high school bully, mixed in here just to see her reasoning of hating Fern. Like, we got some reasons, but I wanted more, especially since she goes out of her way as an adult to torment Fern. And I really liked how Slack, text, email, and messages were done in the story. The second book I read was The Exes, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. So all of Natalie's exes in the past have died, but when Natalie's husband loses all their money, she starts to find out more about her husband and her own past. So sucked me in the beginning, and then again it dragged for me the rest of the way. So many twists and turns that would have been great third act reveals, but would happen in the first half or like around it. Like, there were twists at every corner that there were so many twists that it got annoying how many there were. Some twists were predictable, though how Natalie goes through these revelations I thought was well done and great character growth. She definitely changed throughout the book. It was an okay read. The third book I read was West of Wicked, and I rated this one 4 stars. So it's a dark retelling of The Wizard of Oz, finished in less than a day. Really beautiful stained edges, a lot of different POV chapters from different characters, which usually I'm not a fan of, but it worked really well for the story. Author note in the beginning of the book was like, here's some trigger warnings, there's graphic sex in it, and then you get to like the one graphic, the sex scene in this book, and it's not really that graphic, and it lasts like less than a page. So it's like, that's not really that graphic at all. So that was like kind of disappointing. The story itself is very like Wizard of Oz. Like, you could tell this is Wizard of Oz like retelling, but there's still stuff mixed in it that makes it new, fresh, and intriguing. One twist I inferred earlier, but a couple others I was like, what the heck? I'm intrigued to read more when the sequel comes out later this year, especially with how it ended, and it was a very short read too. So one of the comics I read was The Fearless Defenders, issue 1, and I read this one 4 stars. So Misty Knight brings her friend Annabelle Riggs a artifact that accidentally brings zombified Vikings back to life and brings Valkyrie along. So this is a great first issue of this series. You don't have to read anything. You don't feel like you have to read anything before to know what's going on in this, which is great. Story kept me intrigued. It makes me want to read more. Plus, it has Misty Knight, and I love Misty Knight, especially from the Luke Cage series. And I really liked the kiss between Annabelle and Valkyrie. It was really cute. Then we have What If, starring Daredevil, the Man Without Fear, the fight of his life. And, the fight of his life has ended. And this is like issue 102 because it's part of the What If series. And I read this one 4.5 stars. So this is a retelling of Daredevil's origin story. If Jack Murdock had actually thrown the fight that later caused Matt to become Daredevil. So I had a short recap of Matt's story before the fight happens, and I like how seeing such a small thing change his life. Even though he eventually becomes Daredevil, but for a different reason in this one. Cover itself did make me think that Daredevil was going to lose his life in this comic, but he didn't. It was his dad. I think, maybe. I don't remember. It was been a while since I read this. But I did like it. I also really liked Elektra's design in this book. All the rest of the comics I'm going to go through I got during Free Comic Book Day, which is on the first Saturday of May every year. So the first one I got was Find Your New Fear, issue 1, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. So this has 4 different stories that are part of different comics, and they're just kind of like previews in this one. The first and the third stories were my favorite, especially the latter, since it had very little dialogue, but it was just all illustrations and action, which I liked a lot. The second and fourth stories, I really didn't know what was going on, and I didn't really like the illustration of the fourth story, especially on Vanessa's character. She just looked really like evil and mean in that one, which might have been on purpose, but I just didn't feel any empathy for her either because of it, and like I finished it in like 5 minutes. Then we have Next Level, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. So it's different previews of DC heroes and anti-heroes, where the stories might go. Some of these stories interest me, like Batwoman and Firestorm. I really enjoyed the latter. And the preview was like a story all on its own, so you didn't really need to know anything beforehand or afterwards. The preview itself was a great story. It was really good. Lobo's illustrations in this one I did not like. It was awful and distracting. I did not like them at all. And it does give a good tease about the characters in this involved. And sort of intrigued me to see more of the stories. Not all of those stories, but intrigued me just a little bit. Then we have Supergirl issue 1, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. So Kara goes home to Midvale to visit, but finds an imposter Supergirl instead. So I really enjoyed this, and how it ended makes me want to read more and see like why is it happening. Like, how is this imposter trick Midvale and Kara's family that she's not the real Kara? The illustration style that sort of gave like Mana Pixie Dream Girl vibes a little bit. Plus, it gave Crypto his own origin story, which I enjoyed. Then we have Supergirl The World issue 1, and I rated this one 3.25 stars. So Supergirl saves a girl and a creature from external circumstances. Artwork in the first story was good, and the characterization of Kara looked a little like Millie Alcock, which makes sense since she's going to be the Supergirl in the new DC universe. Second story, I did not like the artwork of the story. It was drawn in a way that made it seem like it was meant for children, and it just kind of threw me off. Not a big fan of that art style or that story. Then we have Superman Time and Time Again issue 1, and this one I rated 4.5 stars. So when Linear Man tries to take Booster Gold back to his time, Superman gets thrown in the mix as well. So cover itself, like it looks like he's going to go to the dinosaur time, right? No, he goes to the future. So it's a good backstory for Booster Gold, along with references to Hunter, Saturn Girl, etc. The story kept me hooked and intrigued, and I didn't know what was going to happen next, and it made me want to read more. Then we have All-Star Superman issue 1, and I rated this one 3 stars. So Superman helps on a Sunman mission and finds it might have been Lex Luthor's plan all along. Plot confused me with random characters that came out of nowhere with no relevance. A lot of different plot threads happening all at once. Did not like Superman's design. He looked ugly. How Superman would... Oh, and then Superman is dying, and that's the only reason he decides to tell Lois Lane his secret identity. Is an interesting choice to leave the reader on. It was just meh. Then we have Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight issue 1, and I rated this one 4.25 stars. So Batman hasn't been seen in Gotham in a while, but what happens when Hunger calls and he's back in town? So this is a tie-in to the video game that came out like a week or so ago. It's very cute, very cheesy, like Lego Batman himself. Good fourth wall breaks. There's no real plot, which is fine. It's just Batman coming back to town and trying to find food, but he has no money. It's easy and fast read. Finished it in like less than 5 minutes. And again, it is a reference to the video game that was coming out. And then the last comic I read was just Superman issue 1. Rated this one 4 stars. Lex Luthor has given LexCorp to Superman, which is now going to be known as Supercorp, and then he has to deal with Lex's enemies now. So very fun, entertaining comic. Like the idea that Luthor can communicate with Superman while he's in prison, and I liked the live wire shout out. How the story is played out is really good. It kept me intrigued, especially with the cliffhanger at the end. Really good illustrations as well. To number done with all the comic books, now we're going to get into more of like the books I read, starting with The Rule of Three, and I rated this one 4 stars. When Julian, Archer, and Freya get stuck in an elevator with each other for 12 hours, they find that they have a lot more things in common along with chemistry. The second book in the Salacious Legacy series, I did enjoy this book and I did finish it fast. Beautiful, stained edges. I enjoyed the throuple, even though I think they got together way too fast, in my opinion. All three are good at balancing each other, and I liked how all three had anxiety, insecurities, and a center about the relationship that they struggle with. Good sex scenes. There is a certain kink that happens in this book a few times. It's a golden shower. I'm not gonna tell you what it is. You can Google it. I didn't really like that kink in this book, but if you do, it's in this book. It wasn't my cup of tea, but I'm just letting you know it is in this book. It happens a couple times. I'm not a fan of it, but it made sense for character-wise. They also had the stupid third act breakup, which I didn't like, but it gets resolved like 10 pages later. This is my least favorite of Sarah Kate so far. I have a bunch of her books. I've read a lot of her books. This is just my least favorite so far. Even though I rated it 4 stars, it is my least favorite so far. The next book I read after that was apparently Sir Cameron Needs to Die, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. So Sir Cameron gets told about the prophecy that he has to die to save the world from the evil sorcerer. Cameron doesn't want to die, which is like legit. So he goes to the sorcerer himself, who changes his life in different ways. So title and synopsis remind me of the book, well, the duology, Everybody Wants to Save the World But Me, especially with what happens at the halfway point. First half was great, and then the second half just dragged for me. Would tease like sex scenes on one page, and then you flip the page to the next chapter, and like they already had it off page, and you're like, damn it, I wanted to watch that. I wanted to see that. And that happened a few times, and I'm like, boo. It got really irritating when it kept happening. Also, like I also didn't really like the ending because it goes from like a fantasy to like sci-fi out of nowhere, and I'm like, I didn't really like that. Not a fan of that. Even with the problems, I did like the book, and it had really cool stained edges. After that, I read Colin Gets Promoted and Dooms the World, and I rated this one 4 stars. So Colin is tired of being treated like shit at his job, so when an abomination tells him he can get anything he wants in exchange for favor, Colin's life and work change forever. Fun book that remind me of the Grim Reaper's Guide books. A couple of them I've read earlier this year, so you just have to watch those videos. Really enjoyed the characters and liked Colin's arc throughout. Twist with Eric was predictable, and I liked his relationship with Colin. Wish there was more information about this seraphic conclave, because we get some information, especially from Eric, but I wish we just like got more about it in general. Good world building, and I really liked how the book ended. It ended differently than I thought, but it made sense for the characters why it did, especially for Colin. After that, I read Hopelessly Teavoted, and I rated this one 3 stars. So Victoria gets disowned from her parents when she decides to take over her best friend's mom's tea shop, but in doing so, she takes over her parents' debt and must reap 3 souls by Halloween. More complications evolve when Azrael tries to help her out. It's okay read that had some interesting ideas that didn't work all the way. It gets mentioned so many times that Victoria smells like strawberries, and then Azrael smells like lemon and wood. Like, we get it. You don't need to mention it every 5 pages. They are awful at communicating, even after they get thrown with like their version of truth serum, and they express their feelings to each other because they're under like this truth serum. They still don't know. They're like, oh my gosh, what if he still doesn't love me? What if he doesn't like me at all? And it's like, you're under a truth serum, and you were asked if you guys liked each other. Of course you guys like each other. Why can't you just freaking talk about your freaking feelings? Oh my goodness, it's not that hard. They're very horny for each other when they can't touch. Even when it's inappropriate. Because later in the book, they get cursed, so they can't touch each other. And it's like, they're very horny. And it's like, what? Book would also repeat itself, like we would learn something, and then later the characters would say the exact same thing, something else to a different character, whatever. It's like we already been told this. And then there would also be cringe dialogue, like explain that to me, and it'd be like, or like girl dinner, and it was just like it would take me out. The villain gets defeated pretty easily, and then the touch curse gets lifted pretty easily as well, which just takes out all the tension it was leaving. Because you have all this tension, like, oh my gosh, we can't touch, because if we touch, then I die. And then it gets lifted, and it's like, oh, okay. And it's like, all the tension gone, out of the room. Good sex scenes, and I liked how Azrael fell first. Pretty, cover was pretty. I liked the magic system. There is a sequel coming out, but I'm not reading it. Book could have been better, in my opinion. After that was Cake Eater, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. So this was a futuristic retelling of Marie Antoinette. Premise itself was interesting, especially since it's retelling, and the cover drew me in. I did like the little references to Marie's actual life that were sprinkled in. Book at times did drag for me, and I have mixed feelings of how it ended, especially with, like, there's a fake out, and I wish, like, we got the real thing instead of the fake out, but I also sort of like how they had the fake out. It's just really confusing, and I'm like, They vape in the book, which checked me out, because this book's supposed to take place in, like, the 3000s or whatever, and kids are vaping. Okay. This book is labeled as romance, but it's not really. Marie and Louis' arcs throughout the book were good, and I like what we found out about Louis. I really liked the inclusivity with this book. Thought it was well done. Okay read and retelling. After Cake Eater was Her Howl, and I rated this one 4 stars. So Rue gets sent to Sacred Heart after kissing a girl at her old school, but finds out that may not be the only thing wild about her. So really enjoyed this book. Writing drew me in immediately. In the beginning, Rue annoyed me, and so did her mom, but she grew me as a character, and she had a great arc throughout. I really like the passages when she's in wolf form, and where we actually get like her perspective as a wolf, because I read books where, like, they're in wolf form and we get one passage and that's it. So I liked how there were multiple passages of her as a wolf. How they talk about Christianity, I thought was well done, and I felt like it wasn't forced down people's throats. It gave good context for the overall story, and they talk about stuff I hadn't seen before in other books. When the characters are at private schools or private academies, especially Christian ones. Cool cover, and the book also takes place in the 90s, so there are callbacks to pop culture and Christian artists during that time. Also, like, good girl and little girl get used, like, a lot in this book. Not a lot, but they do get used a few times, and it just kind of grossed me out. It was really annoying, especially when we get, like, a surprise villain at the end. It was, like, gross. Then after that was It's Not Her, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. So, told through dual perspective of an aunt and her niece during a family vacation when Reese, the niece, that wasn't meant to rhyme, disappears after her parents' murder. So, I really enjoyed this book. Hooked me in the first 2 chapters. And I needed to know how it ended, which was a complete twist. That was done really well. Author does a really good job with all the red herrings, making you think one way, but then the actual explanation happens. You're like, oh, okay, that makes complete sense. Why it was that, not this. There was something in the beginning that bothered me, with how Reese describes her parents, but then that gets explained away, and that's understandable and good resolution for something later on. Book was really good, and I would recommend it. After that, we have Too Old for This, and rated this one 4.5 stars. So Lottie is a serial killer who starts getting back onto her murderous ways when a woman shows up to make a docu-series about her. Finished booking it around a day. It was that good. The story starts off immediately, which I wasn't expecting, but is a good way to start the book. Short chapters, which are great. Book kept me intrigued, and I never knew what was going to happen next. Really liked Lottie, even though she's a serial killer. Even the ending surprised me, as I thought it was going to go one way, and then it was going to go another way, and then it backtracked to the OG way. Thought it worked better. Either way would have been good, but I liked how it ended. Also, they were creative kills. Then we have Honeysuckle, which I rated 4.25 star. So Rory's sister creates Day for Rory as a playmate. when they were younger, but over the years, Day keeps getting rebuilt with no say, while Rory gets more and more attached. Fast read, finish in less than a day, short chapters, and I liked how we got perspectives from both Rory and Day. Really great imagery, and I really like that I really enjoyed the theme throughout. What happens with Day's voice, I really enjoyed because, with voice, it can be silenced. But in this one, she's given a voice and she just doesn't want it. And I thought that was really interesting and well done because it is kind of a take on women's voices. Rory at times felt like a nice guy to me, which was interesting. Last few chapters were very tension ridden and it kept me hooked. Whole book did. Felt like a good ending too, especially what happens today. Good overall story about women and how men try to control them. It talks a lot about that. Like, that's a good theme throughout the book, but it doesn't feel like forced or that repetitive. Then we have the Hookup Plan, which I rated 3.75 stars. So all old school rivals Drew and Lyndon meet at their old high school reunion and have a one-night stand, not knowing that Drew is doing an audit at the hospital Lyndon works at. Very cute book. Liked the color of the cover. Book synopsis made it seem like it was like an enemies to lovers, but it was more like a old rivals to friends to benefits to lovers, which was kind of disappointing. Some sex scenes, good story, but at times felt like it was repeating, and that was really annoying. Third in the series, but you don't need to read the others to know what's going on because they do kind of do a little recap of the other characters in the other books. No third act breakup, which was good because it seemed like it was going to go that way. I also wish Dr. Coleman got what was coming for him. It just felt kind of anticlimactic. Then we have the Daisy Chain Flower Shop, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. So Daisy and Elliot fake date when Daisy's flower shop is deemed cursed, but what happens when those fake feelings become real? This is the 6th book in the Dream Harbor series. You don't really need to read the other ones. You can read these books out of order. You don't have to worry about reading them in order. Enjoyed this one a lot more than I thought I would. Finished in less than a day. Didn't expect the book to have a fake dating trope, but it worked really well for the story and characters. Elliot blushes or turns red so many times in this book, it got annoying. Lack of sex scenes in like the first half, like there's some, but like the sex scenes don't happen until like the later half, and there's not a lot, which is surprising because usually there's like a decent amount in the Dream Harbor series books, but there's not in this one, which is kind of sad. The story kept me intrigued because I wanted to see what was going to happen, and I liked what was done with Daisy's ancestor and Nathan, especially with what Daisy does because of it. I really enjoyed the book a lot more than I thought I would. Then we have the fake deviation offense, and I rate this one 5 stars. So Auric and Alexo start a PR relationship when Auric saves Alexo during karaoke night, but what happens when this fake relationship turns into a real one? So this is the 2nd book in the Magic and Romance series, and I really loved this book. I loved it a lot more than I thought I would. Beautiful themed edges. Story starts off immediately and works really well throughout. I was so invested and needed to know what was going to happen next. There is a twist at the halfway point that in most books would be a third act reveal, but it does work for the story why it's revealed at the halfway point. I really enjoyed Auric and Alexo and their arcs. I really liked Alexo's femme energy. It was great. Really awesome lines in the book that are so relatable and good sex scenes. There were some like news reports in some of the beginning chapters, which didn't really do anything, but I really enjoyed reading those. This is my favorite of Sarah Rauch's so far. I can't describe how much I loved and really, really enjoyed this book. And I also had really cool stained edges. I don't know if I said that or not, but I had really cool stained edges as well. The second to last book I read was Me Stalk Me, and I rated this one 4.25 stars. When Izzy's BFF Amanda tells her to use an AI boyfriend app since her real boyfriend doesn't give her the time of day, unknowing that her new head of security, Cal, is stalking her and has already hacked the app. So book has been on my TBR for a while, and I enjoyed it a lot. Really liked the text messages between Caleb, who's actually Cal, and Izzy. Good progression of character arcs, and I'm glad Izzy caught on to things that only Caleb knew but Cal said. Because of that, I thought there was going to be a third act breakup, but there wasn't, thank goodness. But I'm glad she's smart enough to notice those things, because I've read books where the FMC isn't smart enough to realize that until later, and it's like, you're so dumb. good sex scenes, and I liked where the third act went. Like I said, no third act breakup. I really hated Evan. His choice was predictable though, and I can't wait to read the sequel that comes out in August. And the last book I read in May was Sweetpea, and I rated this one 3.75 stars. So Renanan lives an ordinary life as a reporter with her dog Tink and her cheating boyfriend, but what they don't know is Renanan is a serial killer in her spare time. In the beginning, the writing was kind of hard to understand, and then characters were just thrown at you, and then with no like explanation of who these characters were. And I'm like, who is this? And so I would try to find explanation of who these characters were. It was until later, like, oh, this is who this person is. And it's like, okay, and this would have been nice to know earlier. I also liked Renanan's kill list, beginning of some chapters, interesting backstory. I didn't really like what happens during the third act, even though I'd never seen that before in a female serial killer book. It was just like, oh great, we had this trope. But then with it though, it does an interesting thing in the last few pages of the book that kind of makes it leave on a cliffhanger, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I see why we're doing it this way. There, like I said, because it leaves on a cliffhanger, there's other books in the series, but I don't think I'm gonna read more. I sort of like how it ended personally, and I'm like, I don't need to read more. I sort of like how it is. So yeah, those were all 27 books I read in May. If you have any recommendations for June, have any recommendations for me in June, let me know down below. Otherwise, I'll see you next month. Bye.